Hannah Cole wiped the sweat from her forehead as she stepped out of her rental car. The Texas heat hit her like a wall, making her regret her choice of a business blazer and slacks. 20 years away from Peachville had made her forget how unforgiving the summer sun could be. She stared at the dilapidated farmhouse in front of her. The once white paint was now gray and peeling. The porch sagged in the middle, and several windows were cracked. This was her father's legacy, the last piece of the past she needed to sell before she could put Peachville behind her for good. Chapter 4. Days, she muttered to herself, checking her watch. Sign the papers, meet the realtor, and I'm on a plane back to Denver. Hannah grabbed her suitcase from the trunk and made her way up the creaking steps. The key stuck in the lock, requiring a hard jiggle before the door finally swung open with a groan. The musty smell of abandonment hit her immediately. "Home, sweet home," she said sarcastically, dropping her bag on the dusty floor. She walked through the empty rooms, memories flooding back with each step. The kitchen where her mother had taught her to bake, the living room where they'd watched old movies together, the bedroom where she'd cried herself to sleep for months after her mother died, and the porch where Eli had kissed her goodbye the night before she left for college, promising they'd find a way to make it work. Hannah shook her head. No use dwelling on ancient history. She was a successful interior designer now, with a thriving business in Denver and clients who valued her eye for beauty and function. This old place was nothing but a burden, a reminder of everything she'd worked so hard to leave behind. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Hannah smoothed her blouse and walked back to the entrance, expecting to see Karen Davis, the realtor she'd arranged to meet. Instead, she found herself face to face with Eli Bennett. Time had been kind to him. His dark hair now had threads of silver at the temples, and the lines around his eyes spoke of years spent squinting in the sun. But his shoulders were still broad, his frame still solid. He looked like a man who'd spent his life working outdoors, steady, strong, and rooted to the earth. "Hannah Cole," he said, his voice deeper than she remembered. "I thought that was your car." Her heart hammered in her chest. "Eli, I didn't expect to see you." His eyes, those same warm brown eyes that had once looked at her like she was his whole world, took her in slowly. "Last time I saw you, you were leaving in tears with your high school diploma and a broken heart." Hannah's chin lifted slightly. "Last time I saw you, you promised you'd write." The corner of his mouth twitched. "I did write, every week for a year. I never got any letters." Eli's brow furrowed, but he didn't argue. Instead, he glanced over her shoulder at the empty house. "You're finally selling it." Hannah nodded. "I should have done it years ago after Dad died, but I couldn't bring myself to deal with it then. And now? Now I'm ready to close this chapter for good. I've got a realtor coming by later today, and a developer who's interested in the land." Eli's expression darkened. "Developer? What kind of developer?" "I don't know the details yet. Some company that builds luxury RV parks." Hannah crossed her arms. "Why do you ask?" "Because I own the orchard next door, been there my whole life. My family's peaches are what put this town on the map." Hannah suddenly remembered the Bennetts and their famous peach orchard. People who used to come from 3 counties over to buy those peaches. Her mouth watered at the memory of biting into one, juice dripping down her chin on a hot summer day. "You still run it?" she asked. Eli nodded. "It's one of the last working farms in the county. Everyone else sold out or gave up." A car pulled into the driveway, and Hannah recognized Karen Davis stepping out, portfolio in hand. "That's my realtor. I should go." Eli stepped back, a shadow crossing his face. "How long are you in town?" 4 days, just long enough to sign the papers and catch my flight back to Denver." He nodded, as if he'd expected that answer. "Well, welcome back to Peachville, Hannah, even if it's just to say goodbye again." As he turned to leave, Hannah called after him. "How did you know I was here?" Eli looked back over his shoulder. "Small town, news travels fast." He paused. "Plus, I make it my business to know what happens to this land. It matters to me." With that, he walked away, his stride long and unhurried, like a man who knew exactly where he belonged. Karen Davis approached with a bright smile. "Mrs. Cole, I'm Karen Davis from Sunbelt Realty. Ms. Hannah corrected automatically. And please call me Hannah. Of course. I see you've met Eli Bennett, Karen said, glancing at Eli's retreating figure. One of our local treasures. Those Bennett peaches are the sweetest you'll ever taste. Hannah pushed away the memory of another kind of sweetness, the taste of Eli's kisses under the old oak tree at the edge of her father's property. Yes, well, I'm not here for peaches. Let's talk about the sale. Karen's smile dimmed slightly. Right, let's go inside and review the offer. Hannah followed the realtor into the house, trying to ignore the strange feeling in her chest, like something was pulling her back toward the porch, back toward the sight of Eli walking away. Inside, Karen spread papers across the kitchen counter, which Hannah had hastily wiped down with an old rag. So the offer from Horizon Leisure Properties is quite generous. They're planning to build an upscale RV resort with all the amenities, swimming pool, clubhouse, the works. It would bring tourism to the area. Hannah nodded, focusing on the numbers. The offer was indeed generous, more than she'd expected for a rundown property with poor soil. It would be a nice addition to her savings, maybe enough to expand her design business, or finally buy that condo in Aspen she'd been eyeing. They want to move quickly, Karen continued. If we can close within 30 days, they're willing to add a bonus. Perfect, Hannah said. The sooner the better. Karen hesitated. There is one potential issue. To build the resort they envision, they'd need more water access than your property currently provides. They're hoping to drill additional wells, which might affect the water table for neighboring properties. Hannah thought of Eli's orchard. Would that be a problem? Karen shrugged. It might be. Peaches need a lot of water, especially in this heat. But that's for the county to decide when Horizon applies for permits. It's not your concern as the seller, but somehow it felt like her concern. Hannah pushed the thought away. What do I need to sign today? Just these preliminary papers to accept the offer. Karen slid a document across the counter. The final contracts will take about a week to prepare. Hannah picked up the pen, then paused. I think I'll read through everything first. Can I call you tomorrow? Karen looked surprised but recovered quickly. Of course, take your time. She gathered her things. Oh, and the Wildflower Cafe in town still makes the best chicken fried steak in the county, if you're looking for dinner. They're open until 8. After Karen left, Hannah wandered through the house again, opening windows to let in some air. The place was a mess, but cleaning it wasn't her problem. In a month, it would be bulldozed to make way for RVs and swimming pools. She stepped onto the back porch and gazed out at the land. The soil was cracked and dry, nothing growing but weeds and a few stubborn wildflowers. In the distance, she could see a line of trees that marked the border of Eli's property, lush and green, a stark contrast to her father's neglected acres. Her stomach growled, reminding her she hadn't eaten since her morning flight. The Wildflower Cafe did sound tempting, but going into town meant possibly running into more people from her past, people who knew her as James Cole's daughter, the girl who'd run away and never looked back. She was debating whether to drive to the next town for dinner when she heard the sound of a truck pulling up. From the kitchen window, she saw Eli getting out, carrying something. Hannah smoothed her hair and went to the door, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach. Thought you might be hungry, Eli said, holding up a brown paper bag. Martha at the cafe still remembers your usual order. The smell of chicken fried steak made Hannah's mouth water. You didn't have to do that. Eli shrugged. Figured you might want to avoid the welcome committee at the cafe tonight. Tomorrow, the whole town will know you're back. Hannah took the bag, their fingers brushing briefly. Thank you, that was thoughtful. There's something else. Eli reached into his truck and pulled out a toolbox. That bottom step is about to give way. Thought I'd fix it for you before you broke an ankle. Hannah started to protest, but stopped herself. The step did need fixing, and she had no idea how long it would take a handyman to come out if she called one. All right. Thank you. She sat on the porch swing eating the best chicken fried steak she'd had in years, while Eli worked on the step. Neither spoke, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It reminded her of summer evenings long ago when they'd sit together, without needing words. Karen mentioned something about the development affecting the water supply, Hannah said finally. Would that hurt your orchard? Eli looked up from his work. It might. Depends on how many wells they drill and how deep they go. My trees need steady water, especially during fruiting season. I'm sorry, I didn't know when I... Don't apologize, Eli cut her off. It's your land. You have every right to sell it. Hannah studied him as he returned to his work, the muscles in his forearms flexing as he hammered. Why did you stay, Eli? You could have gone anywhere after high school. He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he said, some people are meant to leave, Hannah, and some are meant to stay. I'm a stayer. And I'm a leaver, she said softly. Eli finished with the step and tested it with his weight. Good as new. He packed up his tools and stood, brushing dust from his jeans. There's supposed to be a storm tomorrow. You might want to check the roof for leaks. That old patch job your dad did probably won't hold. Hannah nodded. I'll keep that in mind. As Eli turned to go, Hannah found herself not wanting him to leave. Eli, she called, why did you really bring me dinner after all this time? He looked at her, his eyes soft in the fading light. Maybe because when I saw you standing on this porch today for a second, it was like time stood still, like we were 18 again and everything was possible. Hannah's heart squeezed. A lot has happened in 20 years. Yes, it has. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. Found this while I was fixing the step. Thought you might want it back. He placed it in her palm, a small heart-shaped locket. Her mother's locket, the one she'd lost shortly before leaving for college. Hannah had been heartbroken, thinking it was gone forever. Where did you find this? She whispered, opening it to see the tiny photo of her parents on their wedding day. It must have fallen through the cracks in the porch boards, saw it glinting in the dirt. Hannah closed her fingers around the locket, tears pricking at her eyes. Thank you. This means a lot to me. Eli nodded, his expression unreadable. Good night, Hannah. Welcome back to Peachville. As his truck pulled away, Hannah sat on the porch swing, holding the locket to her chest. 4 days, she reminded herself. 4 days, and then back to her real life. But as the Texas twilight deepened around her, with the first stars appearing in the sky and the sound of cicadas filling the air, Hannah felt something she hadn't expected, a sense of coming home. That night, she dreamed of peaches. The next morning, Hannah woke to the sound of thunder. The key. Promised storm was rolling in, dark clouds gathering on the horizon. She put on jeans and a t-shirt from her suitcase, clothes she'd packed as an afterthought, for what she expected to be a brief, business-like visit. After a quick breakfast from the groceries she'd picked up on her way from the airport, Hannah decided to explore the property. If she was going to sell this place, she should at least know what she was selling. The back field stretched for nearly 20 acres, bordered on one side by Eli's orchard and on the other by a small creek that had nearly dried up. Hannah walked the perimeter, memories surfacing with each step. There was the fallen tree where she and Eli had carved their initials, the clearing where they'd spread a blanket to watch meteor showers, the creek bed where they'd caught crawfish, as children, before they'd fallen in love as teenagers. At the far corner of the property stood an ancient oak tree, its massive branches spreading wide. Hannah approached it slowly, her heart beating faster. Sure enough, there it was, their initials carved into the trunk, surrounded by a heart. EB plus HC forever. She traced the letters with her fingertips, remembering the day they'd carved them. They'd been so young, so sure that their love would last forever. A drop of rain hit her cheek, then another. The storm was moving in faster than she'd expected. Hannah turned to head back to the house when she saw a figure approaching from Eli's property. It was Eli carrying a bouquet of wildflowers. Thought I might find you out here, he called as he got closer. Storm's coming in fast. Hannah gestured to the flowers. What are those for? Eli held them out to her. Black-eyed Susan's, your mother's favorite. Hannah took the bouquet, a lump forming in her throat. You remembered. Some things you don't forget. Eli looked past her to the oak tree. I see you. Found our spot? Yes. Hannah glanced back at the carved initials. We were so young. Young doesn't mean it wasn't real. Eli's eyes held hers. What happened, Hannah? Why did you never come back? Not even for holidays? Hannah looked away. After Mom died, Dad changed. He was like a shell of himself. Being here without her was too painful. And then college offered an escape, a new life. And me, was I part of what you needed to escape from? The rain began to fall harder, but neither of them moved. No, Eli, you were the only thing that made it hard to leave, Hannah's voice caught. But I had to go. I couldn't breathe here anymore. Thunder cracked overhead, and the rain turned into a downpour. Eli grabbed her hand. Come on, they ran toward the house. But the rain was coming down in sheets now, soaking them within seconds. By the time they reached the porch, they were both drenched. Hannah couldn't help it. She started to laugh. Eli looked at her, confused at first, then joined in, his deep laugh mixing with hers. We should get inside, Hannah said, pushing wet hair from her face. In the kitchen, she found some old towels in a drawer and handed one to Eli. Sorry, it's not very clean. I've been dirtier, he said, drying his face and hair. Hannah watched him, feeling a strange mix of familiarity and newness. This was Eli, the boy she'd loved, now a man she barely knew. And yet, being with him felt more natural than anything had in years. I should change, she said, suddenly aware of her wet clothes clinging to her skin. When she returned in dry clothes, she found Eli looking at the preliminary contract on the counter. Horizon Leisure, he read. They're the ones who built that. Monstrosity over in Parker County. Tore down the old Wilson farm to do it. Hannah frowned. You know them? They approached me about buying my land last year. Offered twice what it's worth. Eli set the paper down. I turned them down. Why? Eli looked at her, his expression serious. Because some things are worth more than money, Hannah. That orchard is my family's legacy. My son grew up there. Even if he chose to leave for the city, it's still his heritage. You have a son? Hannah asked, realizing how little she knew about his life. Eli nodded. James. He's 20, in college. In Austin. A small smile touched his lips. He's studying environmental science, wants to save the planet. James, Hannah repeated. You named him after my father. Your father was good to me after you left. Gave me work when the orchard was struggling. He was a hard man, but fair. Eli looked out the window at the rain. And I thought, maybe it would keep a small connection to you somehow. Hannah didn't know what to say. The thought of Eli naming his son after her father touched something deep inside her. You were married, she asked. For 15 years. Sarah and I divorced 5 years ago. She wanted a different life, city life like you. There was no bitterness in his voice, just a quiet acceptance. What about you? Ever marry? Hannah shook her head. Came close once. It didn't work out. I'm sorry. Don't be. My career became my focus. I built something good in Denver, a design firm that's finally getting the high-end clients I always wanted. Eli smiled. You were always drawing and rearranging things, even back in high school. Remember how you redecorated your dad's living room as a surprise when he was away on that fishing trip? Hannah laughed at the memory. He was so mad at first. Then he pretended to hate it for a week before finally admitting it looked better. They shared a smile, the years between them momentarily bridged by the shared memory. The rain continued to pour, drumming on the roof. Hannah noticed water beginning to drip through a spot in the ceiling. You were right about the roof. Eli followed, her gaze. Got a bucket? Together they searched the house and found an old pot in a cabinet. Eli placed it under the leak, the ping of water hitting metal creating a steady rhythm. It's getting worse out there, Eli said, looking out the window. Roads might flood. You should probably stay put for a while. Hannah nodded. She'd forgotten how quickly Texas storms could turn dangerous. I'm supposed to meet with the realtor tomorrow. I should call and make sure she knows I've decided to take the offer. Eli's face fell slightly, but he quickly masked it. Right, of course. It's just a piece of land, Eli. It's not like my father did anything with it. It's been sitting empty for years. Maybe. Eli moved to the back door. I should head home before the creek rises too high to cross. Hannah felt a sudden panic at the thought of him leaving. Wait, you said the roads might flood. Is it safe for you to go? I've driven these roads in worse. But he hesitated, hand on the doorknob. "Unless you're asking me to stay." Hannah met his eyes. 20 years fell away in that moment, and she was 18 again, wanting nothing more than to be with him. "The storm's bad," she said softly. "Maybe you should wait it out here." Eli's expression softened. "All right, I'll stay a while." The storm raged through the afternoon, trapping Hannah and Eli in the old farmhouse. They sat at the kitchen table with mugs of instant coffee Hannah had packed in her suitcase, listening to the rain hammer against the roof and the occasional rumble of thunder in the distance. "Remember that summer storm when we were 16? Eli asked, a small smile playing on his lips. "We got caught out by the creek and had to hide under that big rock ledge." Hannah nodded, the memory washing over her. "My father was furious when I got home soaking wet at midnight. My mother just laughed and made us hot chocolate." Eli's eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "She always liked you." "Is she still?" "No," Eli said softly. "She passed 3 years ago. Heart attack." Hannah reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry, Eli. She was a wonderful woman." His hand turned to hold hers, warm and calloused from years of hard work. "She asked about you sometimes. Wondered how you were doing in the big city." Hannah felt a pang of guilt. "I should have kept in touch, with her at least. You were young. We all make choices." Eli's thumb traced small circles on her palm, sending tingles up her arm. "You said you came close to getting married once. What happened?" Hannah pulled her hand away, suddenly needing distance. "Robert, he was a client actually, hired me to design his vacation home in Aspen. One thing led to another, and 2 years later he proposed. But I caught him with his assistant the week before the wedding." Hannah shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant, though the memory still stung. "Dodged a bullet, really? He turned out to be a controlling jerk once he thought he had me." Eli's jaw tightened. "His loss. What about you and Sarah? What happened there?" Eli sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Nothing dramatic. We just grew apart. She never really took to farm life. Always dreamed of living in a high-rise somewhere, going to fancy restaurants and theaters. When James left for college, there was nothing keeping her here anymore." "Do you still love her?" Hannah asked, before she could stop herself. Eli met her eyes. "No, I care about her as James's mother, but whatever love we had faded a long time ago." He paused. "We tried to make it work. For James. But in the end, staying together would have made us all miserable." The rain pounded harder, and another leak sprang from the ceiling. Eli quickly found another pot and positioned it under the drip. "This place is falling apart," Hannah said, looking around the kitchen with its peeling wallpaper and cracked linoleum floor. "I should have sold it years ago. It needs work," Eli agreed. "But it's got good bones. Your grandfather built it to last." Hannah ran her finger along a scratch in the wooden table. "I remember helping Mom sand this table down and refinish it when I was 10. She let me pick the stain color. You went with the darkest one they had," Eli said with a chuckle. "Your mom tried to talk you into something lighter, but you were determined." Hannah looked at him in surprise. "You remember that?" "I remember a lot of things about you, Hannah. Things you probably forgot a long time ago." Their eyes held, and Hannah felt her cheeks flush. She stood abruptly. "I should check the rest of the house for leaks." Eli followed her as she moved, from room to room, placing pans and bowls under the worst spots. In her old bedroom, now empty except for a metal bed frame, water was streaming in through a corner of the ceiling. "That's bad," Eli said, frowning. "If we don't get that under control, you'll have water damage in the walls." "Does it matter? The place is going to be torn down anyway." "It matters if you're staying here for 4 days," Eli countered. "And it matters because this is still your home, even if you're selling it." "It hasn't been my home for a long time," Hannah said softly. Eli looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. "I've got some tarps in my truck. If the rain lets up a bit, I can try to cover the worst parts of the roof. At least keep it from getting worse until the storm passes." Before Hannah could respond, there was a loud crack, followed by a crash from outside. They rushed to the window to see that a large branch from the old maple tree had fallen onto the porch roof. "That didn't sound good," Hannah said. They hurried downstairs and out onto the porch. The branch had smashed through a section of the roof, leaving a gaping hole. We need to get that off before it causes more damage, Eli said, already moving into the rain. Together, they worked to drag the heavy branch off the porch. The rain soaked them again, but Hannah barely noticed as she and Eli struggled with the waterlogged wood. When they finally managed to pull it clear, they stood in the downpour, breathing hard. Water plastered Hannah's hair to her face, and her clothes clung to her skin. She looked at Eli, who was equally drenched, and felt a laugh bubbling up. The absurdity of the situation. Here she was in the middle of a Texas storm, hauling tree branches with her high school sweetheart, 20 years after she'd sworn never to come back. Eli seemed to read her thoughts and laugh too, his face breaking into that familiar grin that had once made her heart race. It still did. "We should get inside," he said, but neither of them moved. The rain fell between them, and Hannah was 18 again, standing in the orchard with Eli, their whole lives ahead of them, before everything fell apart, before she ran away. "Eli," she said, his name almost lost in the sound of the storm. He stepped closer, reaching out to brush wet hair from her face. "Yeah? The screech of tires on wet pavement interrupted her. They both turned to see a sleek black SUV pulling into the driveway. A man in an expensive suit dashed from the car to the porch, holding a briefcase over his head as a makeshift umbrella. When he spotted Hannah and Eli standing in the yard, he looked startled. "Ms. Cole?" he called. "Hannah Cole." Hannah stepped forward. "Yes?" "David Mercer, Horizon Leisure Properties." He moved under the partial shelter of the porch. "Karen Davis told me you're considering our offer. I was in the area and thought I'd stop by to address any questions you might have." Hannah was acutely aware of her soaked clothes and dripping hair. "Mr. Mercer, this isn't really a good time." "Nonsense. There's no better time to discuss business than the present." Mercer's smile didn't reach his eyes as they flicked dismissively over Eli. "Perhaps we could talk inside." Hannah felt Eli stiffen beside her. "Mr. Mercer," she said firmly, "we're in the middle of dealing with storm damage. Can we reschedule?" Mercer's smile tightened. "Of course. I understand completely." He handed her a business card. "Call me when you're ready to move forward. The sooner we close this deal, the sooner you can get back to your life in Denver." He turned to go, then paused. "Mr. Bennett, isn't it? I believe we've met. Our company approached you about your property last year." "That's right," Eli said coldly. "Well, perhaps seeing the benefits of our development next door will change your mind about selling." Mercer's tone was friendly, but his eyes were calculating. "Premium RV lots like the ones we're planning tend to increase neighboring property values substantially. My orchard's not for sale, Mr. Mercer. Not to you, not to anyone." Mercer shrugged. "We all have our price, Mr. Bennett. It's just a matter of finding it." He turned back to Hannah. "Ms. Cole, I look forward to hearing from you soon." With that, he dashed back to his SUV and drove away, leaving Hannah and Eli standing in the rain. "Charming guy," Eli muttered. Hannah shivered, suddenly cold. "Let's get inside." In the house, Hannah found some old towels, while Eli brought in a duffel bag from his truck. "Always keep spare clothes in the truck," he explained, pulling out a dry flannel shirt and jeans. "Mind if I change?" Hannah pointed him to the bathroom and went to her bedroom to put on dry clothes herself. When she emerged, she found Eli in the kitchen, examining the hole in the porch roof through the window. "The rain's letting up a bit," he said. "I'll get those tarps now." For the next hour, they worked together to cover the damaged sections of the roof with heavy blue tarps from Eli's truck. The rain had indeed slowed to a drizzle, but the sky remained dark with clouds. By the time they finished, Hannah's muscles ached from climbing and stretching, but the tarps were secure and the worst of the leaks had stopped. "Thank you," she said as they stood in the kitchen, looking at their handiwork through the window. "I couldn't have done that alone." "That's what neighbors are for," Eli said. But his eyes told her it was more than that. Hannah became aware of how close they were, standing of the clean, earthy scent of him, so familiar even after all these years. She stepped back, needing to clear her head. "You hungry?" she asked. "I don't have much, but I could make sandwiches." They ate at the kitchen table, the silence comfortable between them. Outside, the storm was moving on, the thunder now distant. "Rumbles. What's Denver like?" Eli asked suddenly. Do you like it there? Hannah thought about her sleek condo with its modern furniture and city views. It's beautiful. The mountains, the city, there's always something happening, and the design community is vibrant. I've built a good life there. Sounds nice. It is. Hannah hesitated. But sometimes it feels, I don't know, transient? People? Come and go, nothing seems to last. Eli nodded, understanding in his eyes. That's the difference between cities and small towns. Here, nothing ever seems to change. Sometimes that's comforting. Sometimes it's suffocating. Is that why you've never left? The comfort of familiarity? Partly. Eli leaned back in his chair. But mostly it's the land. My family's worked that orchard for 3 generations. When you put that much of yourself into a place, it becomes part of you. Hannah thought about the property she was so eager to sell. Had her father felt that same connection to it? Had she once? I've never felt that, she admitted. I've always focused on the next project, the next client. Nothing's ever felt permanent. Not even with Robert? Eli asked gently. Hannah shook her head. I thought he might be my chance at something lasting, but even before I caught him cheating, I had doubts. He wanted me to give up my business, become a corporate wife who planned dinner parties and charity events. That doesn't sound like the Hannah I knew. No, she agreed. It doesn't. The light was fading outside, and Eli glanced at his watch. I should head back. The road should be passable now, and I've got animals to check on. Hannah felt a surprising disappointment. Of course. They walked to the door together. Eli paused with his hand on the knob. Listen, I've got some surveying equipment at the orchard. Tomorrow, if you're interested, I could help you mark out the property boundaries, make sure everything's in order before you sign the final papers. Hannah knew she should decline. Spending more time with Eli was confusing emotions she'd worked hard to bury, but she found herself nodding. That would be helpful, thank you. I'll come by in the morning then. Eli opened the door but didn't step out. Instead, he turned to face her. It's good to see you, Hannah. Even under these circumstances. Before she could respond, he leaned in and brushed a kiss against her cheek, his lips warm against her skin. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Hannah stood there, her hand touching the spot where his lips had been, heart racing like a teenager's. This wasn't part of her plan. 4 days, sign the papers, back to Denver. No complications. No emotions. No Eli Bennett making her question everything she thought she wanted. She went to the kitchen and picked up Mercer's business card, staring at the embossed logo of Horizon Leisure Properties. The smart thing would be to call him now, finalize the deal and be done with it. But something held her back. Instead, she found herself walking outside to the back porch. The storm had passed, leaving the air fresh and clean. The setting sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the land. In the distance, she could see Eli's orchard, the neat rows of peach trees stretching toward the horizon. For the first time, Hannah really looked at the property she was so eager to sell. Beyond the weeds and cracked soil, she could see traces of what it had once been, a working farm, a family home, a place with history and meaning. Her phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. It was Karen Davis. Hannah, I'm so glad I caught you. I've been trying to reach you all afternoon. The hi. Storm knocked out cell service for a while. Everything's fine, Hannah assured her. Well, mostly fine. There's some roof damage, but Eli Bennett helped me cover it with tarps. Eli Bennett? Karen's voice held a note of curiosity. I didn't realize you two knew each other. Old friends, Hannah said, not willing to share more. Well, the reason I called is that David Mercer contacted me. He said he stopped by to see you. He's very eager to move forward with the sale. In fact, he's authorized me to increase their offer by 15% if you'll sign a letter of intent tomorrow. Hannah's eyebrows rose. 15% more for a property she'd been ready to unload at the original price? Why the sudden urgency? Apparently, they're on a tight timeline with investors. They need to secure the land now if they want to break ground before winter. I see. Hannah stared out at the property again, something nagging at her. Karen, do you know if Horizon has approached other landowners in the area? There was a slight pause on the line. I believe they've been looking at several properties. It's a big project, including Eli Bennett's orchard. Another pause. I'm not at liberty to discuss other clients, Hannah, but I will say that Horizon is very interested in your property, specifically because of its location relative to the creek and the main road. And relative to Eli's orchard, Hannah thought. The pieces were starting to come together. If Horizon couldn't buy Eli's land directly, perhaps they planned to pressure him by surrounding him with development. Cut off his water supply, change the character of the area, make it impossible for him to continue farming. Hannah, are you still there? Yes, sorry, it's been a long day. Hannah took a deep breath. Can you send me the full details of the revised offer? I'll look it over tonight and let you know my decision tomorrow. Of course. I'll email it right away. And don't worry about the property assessment for the storm damage. Horizon is buying for the land value only, so the condition of the house doesn't matter. After ending the call, Hannah sat on the porch steps, watching as fireflies began to blink in the gathering dusk. The familiar evening sounds surrounded her, crickets chirping, frogs calling from the creek, the distant lowing of cattle from a neighboring farm. Childhood memories flooded back, running through the fields with her mother, catching lightning, bugs in mason jars, listening to her father's deep voice as he told stories on this very porch. Not all the memories were painful, she realized. There had been happiness here too. And then there was Eli, the boy who had been her first love, now a man who still looked at her with those same warm eyes. Her the man who had stayed, who had put down roots while she had spent 20 years running. Hannah pulled out her phone again and checked her email. Karen had already sent the revised offer from Horizon. The number made her eyes widen. It was far more than she had expected, more than enough to expand her design firm and buy that condo in Aspen. All she had to do was sign. But as night fell over the Texas farmland, Hannah wasn't sure what she wanted anymore. The next morning dawned clear and bright, as if the storm had never happened. Hannah woke early, a habit she'd developed in Denver, where her days typically started with 6 a.m. yoga followed by client calls and site visits. But today, instead of reaching for her laptop to check emails, she found herself drawn to the window. The rising sun cast long shadows across the fields, dew sparkling on the grass. In the distance, a tractor moved slowly through Eli's orchard. Hannah showered and dressed in jeans and a simple blouse, foregoing her usual business attire. She was making coffee when she heard a truck pull up outside. Eli stood on the porch, holding a brown paper bag and wearing a faded blue work shirt and jeans. His face broke into a smile when she opened the door. "Brought breakfast," he said, holding up the bag. "Martha's cinnamon rolls. Still your favorite?" Hannah's stomach growled at the familiar sweet scent. "You remembered that too?" "Like I said, I remember everything about you, Hannah Cole." They ate at the kitchen table, the cinnamon rolls even better than Hannah remembered. She savored each bite, the sweet icing and spicy cinnamon bringing back memories of Saturday mornings in town with her parents. "So," Eli said, wiping his hands, on a napkin, ready to walk the property line. They spent the morning tramping through fields and thickets, Eli pointing out the metal stakes that marked the boundaries. He showed her where the property met the creek, which was flowing again after the storm. "This creek feeds into the aquifer that supplies water to both our properties," he explained, crouching to scoop up some of the clear water in his palm. "If Horizon drills deep wells for their resort, it could divert water from this natural flow." Hannah frowned. Would that really happen? It's happened in other places where they've built. Parker County's creek went dry 3 months after they opened their resort there. Eli stood, wiping his hands on his jeans. "But that's not your problem, is it?" Hannah felt a twinge of guilt. "Eli, No, I'm sorry." He ran a hand through his hair. "That wasn't fair. You have every right to sell your land." They continued walking, coming to the old oak tree with their initials carved in it. Hannah paused, running her fingers over the weathered carving. "I used to come here sometimes," Eli said quietly. "After you left. Sounds silly, but it made me feel closer to you." Hannah's throat tightened. "Eli, why didn't you ever try to find me? After college, I mean." "I did." His admission surprised her. "About 5 years after you left, I hired a private investigator to track you down. You did what? Why didn't you contact me? Eli looked away. He found you in Denver, said you were working for a big design firm, building your career, and that you were engaged to some hotshot lawyer. Brad, Hannah said softly, we were together for about a year. It wasn't serious, at least not on my part. He proposed, but I turned him down. The PI said you looked happy, that you had this whole new life. Eli met her eyes. I didn't want to complicate things for you, dredge up the past. That wasn't your decision to make, Hannah said, a hint of anger in her voice. You're right, I should have reached out. Eli took a step closer to her. I've regretted it ever since. They stood there, the carved heart between them, years of unspoken words hanging in the air. Hannah could feel her resolve weakening. She'd come here to sell the land and leave, not to fall back into feelings she'd buried long ago. We should keep moving, she said, stepping back. I'm meeting Karen this afternoon to discuss the offer. Eli nodded, something shuddering in his eyes. Right. They continued the property survey in silence, the easy camaraderie of the morning replaced by a tension neither of them acknowledged. When they reached the border with Eli's orchard, he stopped. Want to see something? He asked, curious, despite. Herself, Hannah nodded. Eli led her through a gap in the fence and into the orchard. The trees were heavy with ripening fruit, the sweet scent of peaches filling the air. It's beautiful, Hannah said, running her hand along a branch. Come this way. Eli led her to a section at the edge of the orchard where a dozen young trees stood in neat rows. These are new, planted them just last spring. Hannah looked at the saplings, their slender trunks supported by stakes. They're on my property. Technically, yes. Eli had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Your father gave me permission. How to expand the orchard this far? Said the land wasn't doing anyone any good sitting empty. Dad let you plant trees on his land? Hannah was stunned. Her father had been fiercely protective of his property, even as he'd let it go untended. He and I got close after you left. Eli picked a ripe peach from one of the older trees and handed it to her. We had something in common. We both missed you. Hannah took the peach, feeling its soft fuzz against her palm. I didn't know. Your father was a proud man, too proud to tell you he was sorry for how things ended between you. Sorry? Hannah's voice rose. He's the one who told me to go and never come back. After Mum died, he shut me out completely. He couldn't even look at me without seeing her. Eli's brow furrowed. Hannah? That's not what happened. What do you mean? I was there, Eli. The night before I left for college, he told me I was abandoning the family legacy, just like Mum had abandoned us by dying. He said if I walked out that door, I shouldn't bother coming back. He told you that? Eli looked genuinely shocked. Hannah, your father never said anything like that to me. He told me he'd encouraged you to go to college, to build a life beyond Peachville. He was proud of you. Hannah shook her head, confused. That's not possible. I remember that night clearly. We had a huge fight. He was drinking, said terrible things. Your father had his faults, but he loved you, Hannah. After you left, he kept your room exactly as it was. Every birthday, every Christmas, he'd buy you a gift and put it in that room. Tears burned in Hannah's eyes. If that's true, why didn't he ever call me? Why didn't he try to make things right? I asked him that once, Eli said gently. He said, he'd tried calling you that first year, but your roommate told him you didn't want to speak to him. After that, he figured you needed space. Hannah's mind raced. Her roommate freshman year had been Becky, a party girl who rarely remembered to pass on messages. Had she intercepted calls from her father? Had 20 years of estrangement been based on a misunderstanding? I don't know what to believe anymore, Hannah whispered. Eli touched her arm lightly. Taste the peach. Hannah looked at the fruit in her hand, then raised it to her lips and bit into it. The juice ran down her chin as the sweet, tangy flavor filled her mouth. It was the taste of summer, of childhood, of home. The ones growing on your land will taste even sweeter, Eli said. The soil there has something special in it. Your grandfather always said it was the best growing land in the county. Hannah wiped juice from her chin, her emotions in turmoil. Everything she thought she knew about her past, about her father, was being called into question. And now she was facing a decision that would affect not just her future, but Eli's as well. I should get back, she said. Karen will be waiting. Eli nodded, his face unreadable. I understand. As they walked back toward the farmhouse, Hannah found herself stealing glances at the man beside her. The boy she'd loved had grown into a man of substance and integrity, someone who had built a life here while she'd been running from her past. And now she had a choice to make. Sign the papers with Horizon and return to Denver with enough money to secure her future. Or Hannah wasn't ready to consider the or just yet. At the farmhouse, Eli's truck was parked next to a sleek sedan. Karen had arrived early. And beside, Karen's car was the black SUV belonging to David Mercer. Looks like they're eager to close the deal, Eli said, his voice tight. Hannah touched his arm. Eli, But before she could finish, the front door opened, and David Mercer stepped onto the porch, a broad smile on his face. Ms. Cole. There. You are. We've been waiting for you, ready to sign some papers and make yourself a very wealthy woman. Hannah looked from Mercer to Eli, feeling caught between two worlds, the life she'd built and the one she'd left behind. And somewhere in between was the truth about her father, about the past, and about what she really wanted for her future. Mr. Mercer, she said, her voice steadier than she felt, I think we have a lot to discuss. Hannah stood on the porch, acutely, aware of Eli beside her, and David Mercer's expectant smile. Through the open door she could see Karen Davis sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread out in front of her. Actually, Mr. Mercer, Hannah said, I'd like to speak with Karen alone first. Mercer's smile faltered slightly. Of course, but I do hope we can wrap this up today. As I mentioned, we're on a tight schedule with our investors. I understand. Hannah turned to Eli. Thank you for your help this morning. Eli nodded, his expression unreadable. No problem. He hesitated, then added, Call me if you need anything else. As Eli walked to his truck, Mercer's eyes followed him with thinly veiled contempt. Stubborn man, he muttered. Some people just can't see progress when it's staring them in the face. Hannah felt a surge of defensiveness. Mr. Bennett has built something valuable here. His orchard is known throughout the state, Mercer waved a dismissive hand. A quaint little operation, sure, but hardly the economic engine this area needs. Our resort will bring jobs, tourism, tax revenue. It's the future, Ms. Cole. I'll keep that in mind during my decision-making process, Hannah said coolly. Inside, Karen stood to greet her. Hannah, I was starting to worry. I see you ran into David. Yes, he's quite persistent. Hannah set her purse on the table. Karen, can we speak privately for a moment? Mercer, who had followed them in, took the hint. I'll wait in my car. No rush. His smile didn't reach his eyes as he left, closing the door behind him. Once they were alone, Hannah turned to Karen. I'd like to know more about what Horizon is planning, the full scope of the development. Karen pulled a large folder from her briefcase. They've authorized me to share the complete plans with you. It's quite impressive. She spread out glossy renderings, showing a sprawling resort complex with swimming pools, a clubhouse, a golf course, and rows of premium RV lots. Hannah studied them carefully, noting how the development extended well beyond her property. This covers more than just my land, she observed. Karen nodded. Yes, they've secured options on several adjacent properties. Your parcel is key because of the creek access, but it's just one piece of their overall vision. Does their vision include Eli Bennett's orchard? Karen hesitated. Horizon has approached Mr. Bennett multiple times, but he's been unreceptive. They're proceeding with alternate plans that work around his property. Hannah pointed to an area on the map labeled Future Development Phase. And this section here? That looks like it overlaps with his land. That's a long-term projection, Karen said, shifting uncomfortably. Obviously, they can't develop land they don't own. Unless they find a way to pressure the owner into selling, Hannah said quietly. Karen closed the folder. Hannah, I understand you and Eli have history, but this is business. The revised offer from Horizon is extremely generous, far above market value for land that, frankly, isn't producing anything. Hannah thought of the young peach trees Eli had planted along the border. What if I'm not ready to sell yet? Is this about the price? Because I'm sure David would be willing to. It's not about the money. Hannah stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see Mercer pacing beside his SUV, phone pressed to his ear. "I need more time to think." Karen looked surprised. "Yesterday you were ready to sign. What's changed?" Everything, Hannah thought. In just 2 days, her simple plan to sell the property and leave had become impossibly complicated. She'd learned things about her father that challenged everything. She'd believed for 20 years. She'd reconnected with Eli in ways she hadn't expected. And now she was facing a decision that would affect not just her future, but the future of Peachville itself. "I'd like to postpone our meeting until tomorrow," Hannah said firmly. "I have some things to consider." Karen gathered her papers with a sigh. "All right, but Hannah, opportunities like this don't come along every day. Horizon has other properties they're looking at in neighboring counties. If they decide to shift their development elsewhere—" "I understand the stakes," Hannah assured her. "I just need 24 hours." After Karen and Mercer left, the latter barely concealing his frustration, Hannah paced the empty house, her thoughts in turmoil. She needed answers, clarity about the past, before she could decide on her future. She grabbed her car keys. There was one person in town who might be able to help her make sense of it all. The Wildflower Cafe was busy with the lunch crowd when Hannah walked in. Conversations paused as people recognized her, then resumed with increased intensity. Small-town gossip, Hannah thought wryly. Some things never changed. Martha Wilson, the cafe's owner and a fixture in Peachville for as long as Hannah could remember, came bustling over. She was heavier than Hannah remembered, her once dark hair now silver, but her smile was the same. "Hannah Cole, Lord have mercy. I never thought I'd see you back in Peachville." She pulled Hannah into a tight hug that smelled of pie crust and coffee. "Let me look at you. City life must agree with you. You're as pretty as ever." Hannah returned the hug, surprised by how good it felt. "It's good to see you too, Martha." "Come on back to my office. We can catch up in private away from all these nosy folks." Martha shot a pointed look at the customers who were openly staring. In the small room behind the kitchen, Martha cleared a stack of invoices from a chair. Sit. Can I get you something? Coffee? Pie?" "Coffee would be great, thanks. When—" Martha returned with 2 steaming mugs. She settled into the chair behind her cluttered desk. "So, you're back to sell your daddy's place?" News traveled fast in Peachville. "That was the plan," Hannah admitted. "Was?" Martha raised an eyebrow. Hannah sipped her coffee, gathering her thoughts. "Martha, you knew my father well. After I left for college, what was he like?" Martha studied her for a moment. "He was sad." "Honey, real sad. Losing your mama broke something in him, and then when you left too—" She shook her head. "He wasn't the same." "Did he ever talk about me?" "All the time." Martha leaned forward. "He kept every newspaper clipping about your design awards, you know. Had a scrapbook. Showed it to me once when he'd had a few too many at the Christmas party." Hannah felt her throat tighten. "He did?" "He was proud of you, Hannah. So proud. But he thought you hated him." "I didn't hate him," Hannah whispered. "I was hurt. The night. Before I left for college, we had a terrible fight. He said awful things," and Martha frowned. "That doesn't sound like James. He was always quiet about his feelings, but he loved you something fierce. Eli told me that Dad said he tried to call me that first year, that my roommate said I didn't want to talk to him." Martha nodded slowly. "That's what he told me too. Said he called a few times, but some girl always told him you were out or busy. Eventually he stopped trying. Figured you needed your space." Hannah closed her eyes, remembering Becky, her freshman roommate. A party girl who rarely attended classes and was known for her casual relationship with the truth. Had she really intercepted calls from Hannah's father? Had 20 years of estrangement been based on a lie? "But what about that night?" Hannah pressed. "The fight we had, he told me if I walked out that door I shouldn't bother coming back." Martha set down her coffee cup. "Hannah, your daddy was drinking pretty heavy after your mama died. There were times he probably said things he didn't mean, but I never heard him speak a bad word about you, not once." Hannah felt tears welling up. "I've spent 20 years thinking he resented me for leaving, for being too much like my mother. Oh, honey." Martha reached across the desk to take Hannah's hand. "Your daddy saw your mama in you. That's true. but that's why he loved you so much. You were the best of her living on. Hannah wiped away a tear. I wish I'd known. I wish I'd tried harder to reach out to him. We can't change the past, Sweet Pea, but we can learn from it. Martha squeezed her hand. Now, tell me about you and Eli Bennett. Town's buzzing about you two being seen together. Hannah couldn't help but smile. Nothing stays secret in Peachville, does it? Honey, people saw you hauling tree branches together in the pouring rain. That's practically a marriage proposal in these parts. Martha's eyes twinkled. He never got over you, you know. So I've heard. Hannah's cheeks felt warm. But it's complicated. My life is in Denver now. Is it? Martha looked skeptical. You've built a career there, sure. But is that the same as a life? Before Hannah could answer, the door opened and a young waitress poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, Martha, but there's someone asking for Ms. Cole. Hannah followed Martha back into the cafe, where David Mercer stood near the entrance, looking out of place in his expensive suit. Ms. Cole, he said, approaching with a tight smile. I'm glad I found you. Could we speak privately? Hannah glanced at Martha, who raised an eyebrow. You can use my office, she offered, then added in a whisper to Hannah, holler if you need rescuing. Once they were alone, Mercer cut straight to the point. Ms. Cole, I understand you're having second thoughts about our agreement. I'm taking time to consider all my options, Hannah corrected. That's just good business sense. Mercer paced the small office. Look, I'll be candid with you. Horizon really needs your property. The water access is crucial for our development. And the location is perfect. I'm authorized to increase our offer by another 10%. Hannah's eyebrows rose. That's very generous, Mr. Mercer, but my hesitation isn't about the money. Then what is it about? Bennett? Mercer's face hardened. Why, sir? Has he been filling your head with nonsense about preserving family legacies and small-town values? Eli has nothing to do with my decision, Hannah said, though even to her own ears, it sounded false. I'm simply reconsidering whether selling is what I want right now. Mercer leaned forward, his voice dropping. Ms. Cole, let me be blunt. This deal is going to happen, with or without your cooperation. We've already secured options on most of the surrounding properties. Your father's land is the last piece we need. Are you threatening me, Mr. Mercer? Hannah stood, anger rising. Not at all. I'm simply explaining the reality of the situation. He straightened his tie. Small, outdated operations like Bennett's Orchard are on their way out. It's just a matter of time. Our development is the future of this area. That's not for you to decide. No, but market forces will. When Bennett finds himself surrounded by our resort, with tourists wandering through his orchard, taking pictures and disrupting his work, well, he'll sell eventually. Everyone has a breaking point. Hannah's hands clenched. I think this conversation is over, Mr. Mercer. He shrugged, reaching into his pocket for a business card. Think about it overnight, Ms. Cole. My offer increases. Now, but it won't stay on the table forever. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable. After he left, Hannah stayed in Martha's office, her anger slowly giving way to resolution. Mercer's tactics had clarified one thing for her. She didn't want Horizon anywhere near Peachville. Martha returned, concern on her face. Everything okay, honey? That man looked like bad news in an expensive suit. He is. Hannah took a deep breath. Martha, do you know if my father left any personal papers? Letters, maybe? Anything that might tell me more about what he was thinking in those years after I left? Martha thought for a moment. Well, he kept a lot of stuff in that old roll-top desk in his study. Don't know if it's still there. The desk, Hannah had forgotten about it. Her father had always kept it locked, calling it his private domain. Thank you, Martha, for everything. Hannah hugged the older woman. Anytime, Sweet Pea. And Hannah, whatever you decide about the property, know that there are people here who still care about you. Who always have. Back at the farmhouse, Hannah headed straight for her father's study. The roll-top desk stood in the corner, covered in dust but otherwise untouched. Hannah tried the roll-top, but as expected, it was locked. Where would her father have kept the key? She searched the obvious places. Dresser drawers, the kitchen cabinet where he'd kept important papers, even the old cookie jar on the shelf. Nothing. Frustrated, Hannah sat on the edge of the desk thinking. If she were her father, Where would she hide a key she didn't want anyone to find? Then it hit her. The loose floorboard in his bedroom closet, where he'd once hidden Christmas presents. Hannah rushed to the master bedroom and pulled open the closet door. The musty smell of old clothes greeted her. Her father's shirts and pants still hung there, as if waiting for him to return. Hannah knelt and felt along the floor until she found the board that shifted slightly under pressure. Prying it up, she reached into the dark space beneath, and her fingers closed around a small metal box. Inside was a key, along with a folded piece of paper with her name on it. Hannah's hands trembled as she unfolded it. Hannah, it read in her father's cramped handwriting. If you're reading this, I guess I never found the courage to say these things to your face. The key opens the desk. Everything in there is yours. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you. I hope someday you can forgive me. All my love, Dad. Tears blurred Hannah's vision. She clutched the note to her chest, grief and regret washing over her. 20 years lost that could never be recovered. Taking the key, she returned to the study and unlocked the roll-top desk. Inside were neat stacks of folders, a leather-bound journal, and a wooden box. Hannah opened the journal first, recognizing her father's handwriting. It was a diary of sorts, started the day after her mother's funeral. As Hannah flipped through the pages, she saw her own name mentioned frequently. Entries described her father's worry about her, his pride in her accomplishments, his regret over their fight. One entry from a few months after she left for college caught her eye. Called Hannah again today. Same girl answered, said Hannah was at the library studying, left my number again, but she never calls back. Maybe she really doesn't want to talk to me. Can't blame her after what I said that night. The whiskey had me saying things I didn't mean. Told her she was abandoning me just like her mother did. God forgive me for that. Catherine didn't abandon us, cancer took her. And Hannah deserves her chance to fly. I just wish I knew how to tell her I'm sorry. Hannah wiped away tears. All these years she'd believed her father had washed his hands off her. But he'd tried to reach out to make amends, and she'd never known. Next, she opened the wooden box. Inside were photographs, newspaper clippings about her design awards, and a stack of letters addressed to her. Letters that had never been sent. Hannah opened one with shaking hands. Dear Hannah, it began, I hope your classes are going well. Things are quiet here. The Bennett boy, Eli, has been helping me fix the tractor. He asks about you sometimes. I think he misses you as much, as I do. Letter after letter her father had written to her about his daily life, his thoughts, his love for her. But he'd never mailed them, perhaps fearing she wouldn't want to hear from him. At the bottom of the box was a legal document. Hannah scanned it, then read it more carefully, her heart racing. It was her father's will, drawn up 3 years before his death. He'd left everything to her as expected, but there was a handwritten note attached. Hannah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and we never had the chance to make things right. I'm sorry for that. The land has been in our family for 4 generations. I know you may not want it, but before you sell, please talk to Eli Bennett. He loves that land almost as much as he once loved you. Maybe still does. He has plans for it that would make your mother proud. Whatever you decide, know that I loved you always, Dad. Hannah set the will down, her mind reeling. Her father had wanted her to talk to Eli before selling, had known somehow that she would eventually come back just to get rid of the property. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard. Hannah walked onto the porch, her father's journal clutched in her hands. 20 years of misunderstanding, of hurt feelings and pride, had kept her from knowing the truth. Her father had loved her, had tried to reach her, had wanted her to talk to Eli. As if summoned by her thoughts, Eli's truck appeared on the road, slowing as it approached the house. Hannah watched him park and step out, his tall figure silhouetted against the setting sun. Thought I'd check on you, he called as he walked up. Make sure the roof was still holding. The roof is fine, Hannah said, smiling through her tears. But I'm not so sure about me. Eli's face filled with concern. What's wrong? What happened? Hannah held up the journal. I found my father's papers, letters he wrote but never sent. His journal. She took a shaky breath. Eli, he tried to call me. He wanted to apologize. And I never knew. Eli climbed the steps and sat beside her on the porch swing. I told you he missed you. You knew him better than I did in the end. Hannah looked at Eli, really looked at him. The boy she'd loved had grown into a man of character and steadiness, a man who had stayed when she had run. He left a note in his will, telling me to talk to you before selling the land. Said you had plans for it. Eli looked away, a flush creeping up his neck. That was a long time ago. Tell me, Hannah urged, what were these plans? Eli sighed, running a hand through his hair. About 5 years before your father died, I approached him with an idea. The soil on his property is perfect for a special variety of peach I'd been developing, sweeter than anything on the market, but they need the right conditions to thrive. The trees you planted along the border? He nodded. A test run. They're doing well, but they're just the beginning. I wanted to lease the whole property, turn it into an expansion of my orchard. Your father liked the idea, but he wanted your approval first. My approval? But I hadn't spoken to him in years. Still, it was your inheritance. He wouldn't make any major decisions without talking to you first. Eli looked at her. He was going to call you about it, but then he got sick. After he died, I figured it wasn't the right time to bring it up. And then years passed and you never came back. Hannah tried to imagine it. Her father's land transformed into an orchard, the barren fields bursting with life and sweetness. It was a beautiful vision, so different from Horizon's concrete and chlorine. Eli Mercer came to see me at the cafe. Hannah told him about the developer's increased offer and his thinly veiled threats. He's determined to get this land, with or without my cooperation. Eli's jaw tightened. Sounds like him. He tried the same tactics with me last year. When I wouldn't sell, he started spreading rumors in town that I was blocking progress, costing the area jobs. What are we going to do? Eli raised an eyebrow. We? Hannah felt a blush creep up her cheeks. I mean, what should I do? I don't want to sell to Horizon, not after what Mercer said. But I live in Denver, my business is there, I can't just... She trailed off, unsure how to finish. You can't just stay, Eli finished for her, his voice gentle. I understand, Hannah. You built a life there. The sun had almost disappeared behind the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. In the distance, the lights of Eli's farmhouse winked on, a beacon in the gathering dusk. I called my assistant today, Hannah said quietly. Asked her to reschedule my appointments for next week. Eli looked at her in surprise. You're staying longer. I need time to figure this out, all of it. Hannah met his eyes. My father wanted me to talk to you before making any decisions about the land, so I'm talking to you. Eli's hand found hers on the swing, his rough palm warm against her skin. What do you want to know? Everything, Hannah said. Tell me about your orchard, about my father, about the years I missed. As night fell over the Texas farmland, they sat on the porch swing, talking. Eli told her about the drought years when the orchard had nearly failed, about her father's quiet support, about the day his son was born and the day his marriage ended. Hannah shared stories of her career, her travels, her life in Denver that suddenly seemed less substantial than she'd believed. The moon rose full and bright, casting silver light over the fields. In the distance, the first peaches of the season gleamed pale gold among the leaves of Eli's orchard. It's getting late, Eli said finally. I should go. But neither of them moved. Hannah was acutely aware of his hand still holding hers, of his shoulder pressed against hers on the narrow swing. Eli, she said softly, if I don't sell to Horizon, what happens? You mean, what are your options? He thought for a moment. You could hold on to it. Lease it to me for the orchard expansion if you wanted, or find another buyer who wouldn't build a resort. And if I decide to stay, the question hung in the air between them. Eli turned to face her, his eyes serious in the moonlight. Stay? 10 Peachville? Hannah nodded, her heart racing. It's just a thought. I don't know, maybe open a small design studio here. There are plenty of old houses that could use updating. I could split my time between here and Denver at first. Eli was quiet, considering. Is that what you want, Hannah? To come back to the place you spent 20 years running from? I'm not sure what I want anymore. Hannah looked out at the land, That had been in her family for generations. But I know what I don't want. I don't want to make another decision based on hurt and misunderstanding, like I did when I left. Eli's hand tightened around hers. Whatever you decide, I'm here. As a friend, as a neighbor, as whatever you need me to be. Hannah looked at him, at the earnest face she'd once known better than her own. In his eyes, she saw the boy who had carved their initials in a tree, but also the man who had weathered storms and heartbreaks and remained standing, rooted in this place they both came from. You once said some people are meant to leave and some are meant to stay, Hannah said. What if someone who left realizes they made a mistake? Then they come home, Eli said simply. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch gentle. Hannah Cole, are you thinking about coming home? Instead of answering, Hannah leaned forward and kissed him. It was a soft kiss, tentative at first, then deepening as Eli's arms wrapped around her. 20 years fell away, and yet it was nothing like their teenage embraces. This was the kiss of adults who had lived, lost, and perhaps found each other again. When they finally pulled apart, Hannah rested her forehead against his. I think I might be, she whispered. Thinking about coming home, that is. Eli smiled, the moonlight catching in his eyes. Well, that changes everything, doesn't it? The sound of a car engine broke the moment. Headlights swept up the driveway, and Karen Davis's sedan came to a stop beside Eli's truck. Hannah? Karen called, stepping out. I'm so glad you're still up. I have news that can't wait until morning. Hannah and Eli stood as Karen hurried up the porch steps, a folder clutched in her hands. I just came from an emergency town council meeting, she said breathlessly. David Mercer presented Horizon's final plans for approval. The town council doesn't have authority over private land sales, Eli said, frowning. No, but they do have authority over water rights and zoning permits, Karen explained. Mercer was seeking preliminary approval for their water usage plans, but when he showed the complete proposal, she handed the folder to Hannah. Look at this. Hannah opened it to find a map similar to the one Karen had shown her earlier, but with one significant difference. The area marked future development phase, now extended well beyond Eli's orchard, encompassing nearly a third of the town. They're planning to buy up half of Peachville, Hannah asked, shocked. Karen nodded grimly. Phase 1 is your property and the surrounding parcels. Phase 2 includes Main Street and several residential neighborhoods. They want to create what Mercer calls a total destination experience. Eli's face darkened. They'll destroy the town. The council was divided, Karen continued. Some members see it as an economic opportunity. Others are worried about what it would mean for Peachville's character. They've scheduled a public hearing for next week to gather community input. Hannah looked from the plans to Eli, then back to Karen. Does Mercer know you're showing me this? Karen shook her head. He presented it as public information at the council meeting, but he probably assumed it would take days for word to spread. She took a deep breath. Hannah, I have to be honest with you. I've lived in Peachville my whole life. I love this town. When I first started working with Horizon, I thought their resort would bring needed jobs and tourism. But this planet, it's too much. It would change everything. So why are you telling me this now? Hannah asked. Because your decision about selling affects everyone. If you refuse to sell, it throws a wrench in their entire plan. They need your creek access for their water features. Without it, the whole first phase becomes much less viable. Hannah looked at Eli, whose face was tight with concern. When is the public hearing? Next Wednesday, Karen said. A week from today. Hannah thought of her rescheduled appointments in Denver, of the life she'd built there. Then she thought of her father's journal, of the letters he'd never sent, of the love for this land that had skipped a generation but perhaps wasn't entirely lost. I'll be there, she said firmly. After Karen left, Hannah and Eli stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation settling between them. You know what this means? Eli said finally. If you decide not to sell, Mercer won't take it well. He'll try everything to change your mind. Let him try, Hannah said, a new determination in her voice. This isn't just about you and me anymore. Eli, it's about Peachville, about what kind of future we want for this place. Eli smiled, taking her hand again. We? So you're staying? Hannah looked out at the moonlit fields, at the land that had been in her family for generations. Land that her father had wanted her to talk to Eli about before selling. Land that might, just might, be where she belonged after all. At least until the hearing, she said. After that, she squeezed his hand. We'll see. As they stood together, on the porch of her childhood home, Hannah felt something she hadn't experienced in 20 years. The sense that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Whether that feeling would last beyond the week, beyond the hearing, beyond the immediate crisis with Horizon, that was a question for another day. For now, it was enough to stand beside Eli, their hands intertwined, both of them ready to fight. For what mattered? For the town, for the land, and maybe, just maybe, for each other. The next morning, Hannah woke early, the events of the previous day still swirling in her mind. She'd found her father's journal, discovered the truth about their estrangement, kissed Eli under the moonlight, and learned of Horizon's plans to fundamentally change Peachville forever. It was a lot to process. Over coffee on the porch, she called her assistant in Denver again. "Jackie, I need you to clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks," she said, "and send me the Henderson proposal files. I can work on them remotely." 2 weeks? Jackie sounded surprised. "Hannah, you have the Brinkman consultation on Monday. They specifically requested you. Reschedule it. Family emergency." It wasn't entirely a lie, Hannah reasoned. This was about her family's legacy. "And Jackie, if David Mercer from Horizon Leisure Properties calls the office, tell him I'm unavailable." After hanging up, Hannah surveyed the property with new eyes. Not as a burden to be shed, but as possibility. The fields that had lain fallow for years could bloom again, if Eli's vision for an expanded orchard came to fruition. The house, though neglected, could be restored. Her designer's mind was already sketching renovations, opening up the kitchen to the living room, adding French doors to the back porch, updating the bathrooms while preserving their vintage charm. Hannah was so lost in thought that she didn't hear Eli's truck until it was coming up the driveway. He stepped out carrying 2 cups of coffee and a white bakery bag. "Breakfast delivery," he called, climbing the porch steps. "Martha's cinnamon rolls, fresh from the oven." Hannah accepted the coffee gratefully. "You're going to spoil me with these." "That's the plan." Eli's smile was warm, but slightly hesitant, as if he wasn't sure where they stood after last night's kiss. Hannah took a step closer to him. "About last night." "Hannah, you don't have to." She cut him off with a quick kiss. "I don't regret it, if that's what you're worried about." The tension in Eli's shoulders visibly relaxed. "Good, because I've been waiting 20 years to do that again." They sat on the porch steps eating cinnamon rolls and drinking coffee, the morning sun warm on their faces. Hannah told Eli about her decision to stay for 2 weeks and her nascent ideas for the property. "You're really considering keeping it?" Eli asked, surprise and hope mingling in his voice. "I'm considering a lot of things I wouldn't have thought possible 3 days ago." Hannah licked icing from her fingers. "Tell me more about your idea for the orchard expansion. How would it work if I stayed in Denver but kept the land?" Eli's face lit up as he described his vision. The special variety of peaches he'd been developing would thrive in her soil, which had a unique mineral composition. He'd lease the land, handle all the planting and maintenance, and they'd split the profits. Or if she preferred, he could buy the property in installments over time. The first real harvest wouldn't be for 3 years, he explained. But once the trees mature, they'd produce for decades. Your family's land would be growing something sweet again, just like in your grandfather's time. And if I decided to stay? Permanently, I mean, not just for 2 weeks. Eli looked at her, his eyes serious. Then we'd figure it out together. Business, partners, neighbors. He took her hand. Maybe more if that's what you wanted. The possibility hung in the air between them, fragile and hopeful. Hannah wasn't ready to make that decision yet. Her life in Denver couldn't be dismantled in a day. But for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a different future, one with roots. "First things first," she said, squeezing his hand. "We need to stop Horizon from turning Peachville into a theme park. Karen said the public hearing is next Wednesday, but we shouldn't wait until then to start building opposition." Eli nodded. "You're right. I've got some ideas about that. He hesitated. But Hannah, you should know what you're getting into. Standing up to Horizon won't be easy. Mercer has money and influence. He's already won over some people in town with promises of jobs and economic growth. Then we'll just have to show them there's a better way to achieve those things without selling Peachville's soul. Hannah stood, a plan forming in her mind. I need to talk to Martha. And maybe Pastor Jim. If he's still at the First Baptist Church, people will listen to them. They're both still pillars of the community, Eli confirmed. And there's Tom Garcia, who owns the hardware store. He's president of the Business Association. Now, good. Let's make a list of key people we should talk to. Hannah felt energy coursing through her, the same drive that had fueled her success in Denver, now focused on saving her hometown. And I need to see the full town council minutes from last night's meeting. If Mercer made specific claims about economic benefits and job creation, we need to know exactly what he promised, so we can counter with facts. Over the next few days, Hannah and Eli became the center of a growing resistance movement. Martha offered the cafe as a meeting place, and by Friday evening, a core group of concerned citizens had gathered to discuss strategy. Tom Garcia from the hardware store brought maps showing how Horizon's water usage would affect local wells. Pastor Jim spoke about preserving the town's heritage and character, and Hannah shared the full extent of Horizon's plans, which had shocked even those initially in favor of the development. This isn't just about a luxury RV park anymore, she explained to the packed cafe. It's about whether Peachville remains our town or becomes Horizon's playground. Throughout it all, Eli was by her side, solid and supportive. During the days, they worked separately, Hannah making calls and organizing while Eli tended his orchard. But evenings found them together on her father's porch, planning and talking until the stars came out. Sometimes, when the strategy discussions ended, they would simply sit in comfortable silence, holding hands like teenagers. Other times they would talk about the past, filling in the 20-year gap in each other's lives. Would you have stayed if things had been different with your father? Eli asked one night, the question he'd clearly been holding back. Hannah considered it honestly. I don't know. I was young, ambitious. I wanted to see more of the world than Peachville. She turned to face him. Would you have come with me if I'd asked? Eli was quiet for a moment. 20 years ago? Probably not. The orchard was struggling. After my father died, I couldn't leave my mother to handle it alone. He looked out at the dark fields, but I would have tried to find a way for us to make it work. Weekend visits, summers together, something. We were too young to figure it out, Hannah said softly. And now? Eli's voice was careful, measured. Now we're not so young. Maybe that makes things easier. Or maybe it makes them harder. Hannah leaned her head against his shoulder. I have a business in Denver, Eli. Clients who depend on me. I can't just walk away from that. I know. He kissed the top of her head. I would never ask you to, but the question remained unspoken between them. What happens after the hearing? After Horizon is defeated, if they manage to defeat it? Would Hannah return to Denver, to her carefully constructed life of design consultations and city conveniences? Or would she find a way to bridge the two worlds she now straddled, the ambitious designer and the small-town girl who was rediscovering her roots? On Monday morning, 4 days before the hearing, Hannah was sorting through old photographs she'd found in her father's desk when a car pulled into the driveway. Through the window, she saw David Mercer stepping out, his face grim with determination. She met him at the door before he could knock. Mr. Mercer, I wasn't expecting you. Ms. Cole. His usual smooth charm was notably absent. May I come in? I believe we have matters to discuss. Hannah let him into the living room, where blueprints and town maps were spread across a makeshift work table. Mercer took in the scene with narrowed eyes. I see you've been busy, he said, organizing the locals against progress. Against your version of progress, Hannah corrected. Peachville has its own vision for the future. Mercer paced the room, hands clasped behind his back. Ms. Cole, I'm going to be direct. You're making a mistake, a costly one. He turned to face her. Our final offer is triple the original price. That's far above market value, and you know it. Hannah's eyebrows rose despite herself. Triple the already generous offer would be a small fortune, enough to expand her design firm into multiple cities, buy a vacation home, secure her retirement. "Why so generous, Mr. Mercer?" she asked, her voice steady despite the momentary temptation. "Horizon must really need this specific property. We've invested considerably in planning and preliminary work," he said stiffly. "Changing locations now would be inconvenient." Inconvenient. Hannah smiled thinly. "Like how your resort would be inconvenient for the people who've lived in Peachville their whole lives. For Eli's orchard, which would lose its water supply. Mercer's..." Farsad cracked slightly, annoyance flashing in his eyes. "Bennett's orchard is a quaint relic, Ms. Cole. Barely profitable from what our research shows. He could sell to us and retire comfortably. Not everything is about money, Mr. Mercer. Everything is about money in the end," he countered. "Even your charming rebellion here. You think these people care about preserving a way of life? They care about their property values, their livelihoods. Show them a better economic option, and they'll change sides in a heartbeat." Hannah crossed her arms. "Is that why you're here? To offer me enough money that I'll betray my neighbors? My friends?" Mercer's smile was cold. "I'm here to offer you a business opportunity. One last time." He pulled a document from his briefcase. "This is our final offer. It expires at the end of business today." Hannah took the paper without looking at it. "I'll consider it. See that you do." Mercer headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Miss Cole, you might want to ask your friend, Mr. Bennett, about his finances before you pin all your hopes on his orchard expansion. The bank might have some insights he hasn't shared with you." After Mercer left, Hannah stood in the doorway, the offer clutched in her hand. What did he mean about Eli's finances? Was it just another manipulation tactic? Or was there something Eli hadn't told her? She was still pondering this when Eli's truck pulled up. He climbed out, carrying a basket of fresh peaches, his smile fading when he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, joining her on the porch. Hannah showed him the offer. "Mercer was just here. They've tripled their offer." Eli whistled low. "That's a lot of money. He also said something about your finances, about the bank having insights you haven't shared." Hannah watched his face carefully. "What did he mean, Eli?" Eli set the basket down, his shoulders slumping. "Slightly. I was going to tell you, things have been tight at the orchard the past few years. A late frost 2 seasons ago destroyed most of my crop. I had to take out a loan to keep going." "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that the bank has been making noise about foreclosure." Eli met her eyes. "But this season looks good. The new variety is producing better than expected. If I can hold on until harvest, I should be able to make the payments." "And if you can't," Eli looked away, "then I might lose it all, the orchard, the house, everything." Hannah felt a chill run through her. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want it to influence your decision about selling." Eli took her hands in his. "Hannah, I need you to understand something. Whatever you decide about your land, whether you sell to Horizon, keep it and lease to me, or find another buyer entirely, it has to be your choice. Not because you feel obligated to help me save the orchard." Hannah studied his face, the honest eyes that had never been able to hide anything from her. "But your plan for expanding onto my property would help, yes. But that doesn't make it your responsibility." Eli squeezed her hands. "I've faced hard times before. I'll find a way through this one too." Hannah thought of Mercer's cold smile, his certainty that everyone had a price. "He's using this, trying to drive a wedge between us." "That's his way," Eli agreed. "Find the weakness and exploit it. But Hannah, there's something he doesn't understand about people like us." "What's that?" "We're stronger together than apart." Eli's voice was firm. "I may be struggling financially, but I still know what matters most. And it's not money." Hannah looked at the offer in her hand, then deliberately tore it in half. "You're right. It's not about the money." She let the pieces flutter to the porch floor. "It's about doing what's right for Peachville, and for us." Eli's face broke into a relieved smile. "Us?" "Us," Hannah confirmed, stepping into his arms. "I don't know exactly what that means yet, or how we make it work with my business in Denver. But I'm willing to figure it out, together. As Eli held her close, Hannah realized something had shifted inside her. The pull back to Denver, to her familiar life, was still there. But it was now balanced by something else, a sense of belonging she'd forgotten was possible. Here, in this small town she'd fled, she'd found pieces of herself she hadn't realized were missing. The public hearing was scheduled for Wednesday evening in the high school gymnasium. As Hannah and Eli pulled into the crowded parking lot, she felt a flutter of nerves. Big turnout, she observed, seeing cars lined up along both sides of the street. Word travels fast in small towns, Eli said, especially when Martha Wilson is involved. Inside, the gymnasium was packed. Folding chairs had been set up in rows, with a table at the front for the town council members. On one side of the gym, Horizon had set up displays showing renderings of their proposed resort, swimming pools, a spa, luxury RV sites with individual fire pits. On the other side, Hannah and her allies had their own presentation, maps showing water flow patterns, charts depicting the economic impact of local businesses versus corporate developments, and photographs of Peachville through the years, a visual reminder of what was at stake. Pastor Jim approached them, his face concerned. Mercer's people have been lobbying hard, promised construction jobs to Bob Miller's crew, a contract with Valley Landscaping for all the groundswork. They're picking off support one business at a time. We knew this wouldn't be easy, Hannah said, scanning the crowd. She spotted David Mercer in the front row, flanked by men and women in expensive suits, Horizon executives, no doubt. Mayor Wilson called the meeting to order, explaining the format. Horizon would present their proposal first, followed by those opposing the development. Then the floor would be opened for public comments before the council voted on whether to grant the preliminary permits Horizon needed to proceed. David Mercer took the podium, his presentation slick and professional. He spoke of economic opportunity, job creation, increased tax revenue for schools and infrastructure. The resort, he promised, would bring Peachville into the 21st century while preserving its unique small-town charm. Change is inevitable, he concluded smoothly. The question is whether Peachville will embrace it and thrive, or resist it and continue to decline. Next, it was Hannah's turn. As she walked to the podium, she felt hundreds of eyes on her, some curious, some hostile, some hopeful. She'd prepared notes, but looking out at the faces of people she'd grown up with, she set them aside. "My name is Hannah Cole," she began. "Many of you remember me, James Cole's daughter. I left Peachville 20 years ago, convinced there was nothing here for me. I came back last week planning to sell my father's land to Horizon and leave again as quickly as possible." She paused, looking around the room. "But something happened. I rediscovered what makes this place special. Not just the land or the memories, but the people. People who know the value of roots, of connection, of community." Hannah gestured to Horizon's displays. "Mr. Mercer talks about progress and opportunity. But at what cost? His resort would fundamentally change the character of our town. It would drain our water supply, increase traffic on roads not built for it, and turn Peachville into a playground for wealthy tourists who have no investment in our community." She turned to her own displays. "We're not against development. We're against exploitation. There are better ways to bring jobs and economic growth to Peachville, ways that build on what makes this place special instead of erasing it." Hannah outlined an alternative vision, a farm-to-table tourism initiative centered around Eli's Orchard and other local producers, renovation of historic buildings downtown to create spaces for artisans and small businesses, a farmer's market that would draw visitors from surrounding counties. "This is development that serves the people who live here," she said passionately, "not development that serves corporate shareholders at our expense." She concluded by addressing Mercer directly. "Horizon sees Peachville as a commodity to be bought and sold. We see it as our home. That's the fundamental difference between us, Mr. Mercer, and that's why we'll fight to protect it." The gymnasium erupted in applause as Hannah returned to her seat beside Eli, who squeezed her hand proudly. The public comment period that followed was heated. Some residents spoke in favor of Horizon's plan, citing the need for jobs and growth. But many more rose to support Hannah's vision of development that preserved Peachville's character while still bringing economic benefits. Martha Wilson stood up, her silver hair gleaming under the gymnasium lights. "I've served pie and coffee in this town for 43 years, she said firmly. "I've seen businesses come and go, but what remains is our sense of community. Mr. Mercer can't put a price on that because it's not for sale." Tom Garcia spoke about how his hardware store had survived competition from big box retailers by focusing on personal service and community relationships. "That's our competitive advantage," he said. "The moment we try to be like everywhere else, we lose what makes us special." Throughout it all, David Mercer sat stone-faced, occasionally whispering to his colleagues. When Mayor Wilson finally called for the council vote on Horizon's permit applications, the room fell silent. One by one, the 5 council members cast their votes. 2 for approving Horizon's permits, 3 against. The permits were denied. Cheer went up from Hannah and Eli's supporters, while Mercer and his team huddled in angry consultation. The mayor banged his gavel for order. "This vote means that Horizon Leisure's current proposal cannot proceed as planned," he announced. "However, they are welcome to submit revised plans that address the council's concerns about water usage and scale." Mercer approached the podium one last time, his smile tight. "Horizon appreciates the council's feedback," he said diplomatically. "We remain committed to bringing economic opportunity to Peachville, and we'll be evaluating our options moving forward." His eyes found Hannah in the crowd, cold and calculating. This wasn't over, his look said clearly, not by a long shot. As the meeting broke up, well-wishers surrounded Hannah and Eli, offering congratulations and thanks. Martha hugged Hannah tightly, whispering, "Your mother would be so proud of you, honey, so proud." Later, as they walked back to Hannah's car, Eli suddenly stopped her with a hand on her arm. "Look," he said, pointing toward the parking lot. David Mercer stood beside his SUV, engaged in intense conversation with a tall, distinguished-looking man Hannah didn't recognize. The stranger wore an expensive suit and had the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "Who's that?" Hannah asked. "James," Eli said, his voice strange. "My son." Hannah stared in surprise. "Your son works for Horizon?" "He's an environmental consultant. Has been for about a year." Eli's face was troubled. "I knew he'd taken a job with a development company after graduating, but I didn't know it was Horizon until last week. He called me, warned me that they were planning something big for Peachville. That's how I knew to be at the council meeting when they first presented their plans." Hannah watched the young man gesture emphatically as he spoke to Mercer. There was something familiar in his movements, in the set of his shoulders. "He looks like you," she said softly. "Acts like his mother," Eli said with a hint of pride. "Stubborn, as they come when he believes in something." James spotted them watching and said something to Mercer before walking over, his expression unreadable. "Dad," he greeted Eli with a quick hug. "Quite a meeting." "Didn't know you'd be here," Eli said. "Thought you were in Austin." "Mr. Mercer asked me to come review the water impact assessments." James turned his attention to Hannah. "You must be Hannah Cole. I've heard a lot about you, both from my father and from Horizon's research team." Hannah shook his offered hand. "It's nice to meet you, James. Eli's told me about you too." James glanced between them, a knowing look in his eyes. "I see. Well, you should know that while I work for Horizon, I don't necessarily agree with all their methods, especially not in my hometown." "Is that what you were telling Mercer just now?" Eli asked. James nodded. "Their water usage projections are flawed. I've been saying it for weeks, but they didn't want to hear it. After tonight's vote, they might finally listen." Hannah felt a surge of hope. "Does that mean they'll abandon the project?" "Not likely," James said, "but they might scale it back significantly. Focus on just the RV resort, without all the water features and golf course." He looked at his father. "It might be enough to protect the orchard's water supply if they do it right." Eli's face relaxed slightly. "That would be something, at least." "I should get back," James said, glancing at Mercer, who was watching them impatiently. "But Dad, don't worry. I won't let them hurt the orchard." He smiled at Hannah. "It was nice to finally meet you." Maybe next time we can talk under better circumstances. As James walked back to Mercer, Hannah looked at Eli. Your son is fighting for you from the inside. Seems that way. Eli's voice was thick with emotion. Always thought he'd given up on Peachville. Turns out he cares more than I realized. They drove back to Hannah's house in comfortable silence, the events of the evening settling around them. They'd won the first battle against Horizon, but the war wasn't over. Mercer would regroup, revise his plans, try again. But they'd bought time, and in doing so, had discovered unexpected allies. On the porch, under a sky full of stars, Hannah leaned against the railing and looked out at the land that had been in her family for generations. Land that, a week ago, she couldn't wait to sell. Now she couldn't imagine letting it go. What are you thinking? Eli asked, coming to stand beside her. I'm thinking about roots, Hannah said, about how I spent 20 years trying to forget mine, only to discover they were what I needed all along. Eli's arm wrapped around her shoulders. Does that mean you're staying? Hannah turned to face him. Not full-time, not right away. My business in Denver can't just disappear overnight. She took his hands in hers. But I'm thinking about a compromise. What if I split my time, build a smaller design practice here while maintaining my Denver clients? I could be here 1 week, there the next. That sounds challenging, Eli said carefully, but doable. And eventually maybe I could transition more of my work here. Hire designers in Denver to handle those clients. Hannah's mind was racing with possibilities. I could remodel this house, make it a showcase for potential clients, maybe even open a small storefront downtown for design consultations. Eli smiled, pulling her closer. You're really serious about this? I am. Hannah rested her hands on his chest, feeling his steady heartbeat beneath her palms. I want to be part of rebuilding Peachville, Eli, and I want to be part of your life if you'll have me. If I'll have you? Eli laughed softly. Hannah Cole, I've been waiting 20 years for you to come home. I think I can handle a few more months of part-time togetherness while you figure out the details. Hannah stretched up to kiss him, feeling as though her heart might burst with happiness. It wouldn't be easy, balancing two worlds. But for the first time in her life, she felt like she wasn't running anymore. She'd found where she belonged, not just in a place, but with a person. As they stood together under the Texas stars, the future stretched before them with all its complications and possibilities. There would be challenges, horizons revised, plans, Eli's financial struggles, the logistics of Hannah's split life between Denver and Peachville. But facing them together seemed not just possible, but right. Stay a while, darling, Eli whispered against her hair. Stay for good this time. And Hannah, surrounded by the scent of peach blossoms and the warmth of homecoming, finally knew her answer. I will, she promised. I'm home to stay. But as they held each other in the soft glow of the porch light, neither noticed the envelope. That had been slipped under Hannah's door sometime during the evening. An envelope bearing no return address, containing a single sheet of paper, and a key that would unlock secrets neither of them was prepared to face. Hannah found the envelope the next morning, half hidden under the welcome mat. Her name was written, across the front in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small brass key. What is it? Eli asked, coming up behind her with 2 mugs of coffee. Hannah read the brief note aloud. Hannah, there are things about your father you deserve to know. This key opens box 427 at First Peachville Bank. What you find there might change everything. A friend. Eli frowned. No signature? That's strange. The whole thing is strange. Hannah turned the key over in her palm. Who would send this? And why now? Could be a trick, Eli suggested. Mercer trying to throw you off balance after last night's victory. Hannah shook her head. It doesn't feel like Mercer's style. He's more direct in his manipulations. They decided to visit the bank that morning. The manager, an old classmate of Hannah's named Steve Dawson, greeted her warmly. Hannah Cole, heard you caused quite a stir at the council meeting last night. He smiled. My wife said your speech had half the room in tears. Hannah returned his smile. Just speaking from the heart, Steve. Listen, I need to access a safe deposit box. She showed him the key. Box 427. Steve's expression changed, becoming more guarded. That box, it hasn't been accessed in years. Not since your father. It was my father's? Hannah asked, surprised. Steve nodded. He set it up the year before. He died. Made some special arrangements about it too. He led them to the vault and located box 427. I'll give you some privacy, he said, leaving them alone with the metal container. Hannah's hands trembled slightly as she inserted the key and turned it. The box opened to reveal a folder of legal documents, a small velvet pouch, and an envelope with Hannah's name on it, this time in her father's familiar handwriting. She opened the letter first, her heart racing. Dear Hannah, it began. If you're reading this, I'm gone and someone has finally given you the key I entrusted to them. I ask that it be given to you only if you ever returned to Peachville and showed signs of staying. I didn't want these revelations to bring you back out of obligation or guilt, but only if you'd already found your way home of your own accord. Hannah glanced at Eli, who was watching her with concern. She continued reading. There are things I should have told you years ago. First, about your mother. Her death wasn't as sudden as everyone believed. She'd been sick for months but made me promise not to tell you until after your high school graduation. She didn't want to cast a shadow over that important time in your life. By the time you knew, she was already gone. I've carried the guilt of that deception ever since. Hannah felt tears welling in her eyes. Her mother had known she was dying, had kept it secret to protect Hannah's happiness. The revelation both hurt and healed in equal measure. Second, about the land. It's more valuable than you know, but not for the reasons developers like Horizon might think. Your grandfather discovered something on our property in 1962 but kept it quiet. The geological survey reports are in this box. He didn't want outside interest coming in and destroying what made Peachville special. Intrigued, Hannah set aside the letter and opened the folder of legal documents. Inside were geological surveys, water testing reports, and mineral rights documentation. As she scanned the technical data, her eyes widened. Eli, look at this. There's an underground aquifer beneath our properties. Not just any aquifer, but one with some kind of unique mineral composition. Eli leaned in to study the reports. This explains why the peaches grown along our property line taste sweeter. The water from this aquifer has a higher mineral content that affects the fruit. Hannah turned back to her father's letter, reading the next part aloud for Eli to hear. Bennett Orchard and our land sit atop the same water source. Old Man Bennett knew it too. It's why our families were always close, despite our differences. The water rights legally belong to both properties, as detailed in the documentation. I've kept this quiet all these years, but if developers ever try to move in, these papers give you legal standing to protect the water supply. Use them wisely, Hannah. Hannah looked up at Eli. Did your father ever mention this to you? Eli shook his head, looking stunned. No. He was a man of few words. But it explains why he was always so concerned about water conservation, why he fought so hard against the highway expansion in the 80s. Hannah continued reading the letter, her father's words bringing him to life in a way she hadn't experienced in years. The night before you left for college, I said terrible things I didn't mean. The grief of losing your mother was still raw, and I was afraid of losing you too. I tried to call you many times that first year, but could never reach you directly. After a while, I convinced myself you were better off without me and my bitterness in your life. It was the greatest mistake I ever made. Tears streamed down Hannah's face as she read the final paragraphs. If you found your way back to Peachville, perhaps there's hope for forgiveness. The land is yours, to keep or sell, as you see fit. But remember that it holds more value than money can measure, in its history, in its water, and in the life it can sustain for generations to come. The small velvet pouch contains your mother's wedding ring. She wanted you to have it when you found someone worthy of your heart. I think you know who that might be. I've always loved you, Hannah. I hope you can forgive me for not knowing how to show it. Dad. Hannah set the letter down, overcome with emotion. Eli wrapped his arms around her, holding her while she processed her father's final words. He loved me, she whispered against Eli's chest. All that time, he loved me. Of course he did. Eli said softly. How could he not? After composing herself, Hannah opened the velvet pouch to find a delicate gold ring with a small diamond, her mother's wedding band, simple and elegant, just like Catherine Cole herself had been. This changes everything, Hannah said, looking at the legal documents again. If Horizon tries to drill wells or divert water for their resort, we have legal grounds to stop them. Eli studied the geological survey. More than that, this aquifer has potential as a natural resource in itself. The mineral content, these aren't common combinations. There could be commercial applications. Hannah's mind raced with possibilities. Meaning we could bottle the water or market the unique properties of foods grown with it? Exactly. Your father was sitting on a gold mine without ever realizing its full potential. Eli looked at her with growing excitement. This could save my orchard, Hannah, and it could be the economic opportunity Peachville needs, one that preserves the land instead of destroying it. They carefully gathered all the documents, the letter and the ring, and checked out of the bank. Outside, the Texas sun was bright, reflecting Hannah's suddenly lighter heart. Years of misunderstanding and hurt had been healed in the space of a few minutes, through her father's words reaching out from the past. As they drove back to Hannah's house, she turned to Eli. We need to figure out who sent me that key. Whoever it was knew about the safe deposit box, knew I was back in town, and knew I was planning to stay. Could be Martha, Eli suggested. She and your father were close. Or Pastor Jim, maybe. Whoever it was, I owe them a thank you. Hannah touched the ring in her pocket. They gave me back my father. At the house, Hannah was surprised to find David Mercer waiting on her porch. His usual polished appearance was slightly rumpled, as if he'd had a long night. Ms. Cole, he greeted her stiffly. Mr. Bennett, I hope I'm not interrupting. What do you want, Mercer? Eli asked, his voice cool. To concede, at least partially. Mercer's admission clearly cost him some pride. After last night's vote, I had a long discussion with my team, including your son. He nodded to Eli. We're prepared to significantly scale back our plans, focus just on the RV resort with reduced water requirements and a smaller footprint. Hannah crossed her arms. And you think that will change my mind about selling? Actually, no. Mercer's smile was tight. We've realized that your property is unlikely to be available to us under any circumstances, so we're exploring alternatives. There's land available on the other side of the county that might suit our needs, though it lacks certain advantages of your location. Hannah and Eli exchanged glances, both thinking of the aquifer documentation they'd just discovered. That sounds like a wise decision, Hannah said carefully. Mercer nodded curtly. I'm not accustomed to losing, Ms. Cole, but I recognize when a battle can't be won. You've managed to turn this town against our vision. Rather impressive for someone who hasn't lived here in 20 years. I didn't turn anyone against anything, Hannah corrected him. I just reminded them of what they already valued. Indeed. Mercer straightened his tie. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. Horizon will be withdrawing our offer, effective immediately. I wish you luck with whatever you plan to do with this. He glanced dismissively at the property. Family legacy. As Mercer walked to his car, Hannah called after him. Mr. Mercer, just out of curiosity, did you send me a key yesterday? To a safe deposit box? Mercer looked genuinely confused. A key? No, Ms. Cole, whatever gave you that idea? After he drove away, Hannah and Eli sat on the porch steps, processing everything that had happened. So Horizon is backing off, Eli said. For now, at least. For now, Hannah agreed, but we should still protect ourselves. These documents about the aquifer need to be registered properly, and we should consider forming some kind of conservation trust for the water rights. Eli smiled at her. Listen to you. A week ago you couldn't wait to sell this place and get back to Denver. Now you're talking about conservation trusts. Hannah leaned against his shoulder. A lot can change in a week. Speaking of change, Eli said, his voice growing serious, we should talk about us, Hannah, about what happens next. Before she could answer, a truck pulled into the driveway. James Bennett stepped out, looking anxious. Dad, he called, hurrying up the path. Mom just called me. She's in town at the Wildflower Cafe, sounds upset. Eli stood, concern crossing his face. Sarah's here? Why? Something about selling her share of the orchard? James glanced at Hannah. Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you'd want to know right away. Eli looked torn. Hannah, I should go, she urged him. This sounds important. We can finish our conversation later. After Eli and James left, Hannah sat alone on the porch, her emotions in turmoil. Sarah, Eli's ex-wife, was in town, talking about selling her share of the orchard. Hannah hadn't even realized Sarah still owned part of the business. The complications of real life were intruding on the fairy tale reunion she and Eli had been building. Of course, there would be complexities, ex-spouses, business arrangements, the logistics of her Denver career. Nothing worth having came easily. Hannah fingered her mother's ring in her pocket. Her father had believed she knew who was worthy of wearing it. A week ago, she'd have laughed at the idea of reconnecting with her high school sweetheart. Now she couldn't imagine her future without Eli in it. But what did that future actually look like? Would she really be content splitting her time between Peachville and Denver? Would Eli resent her divided attention? And now, with Sarah suddenly in the picture, discussing business related to the orchard, would new complications arise? Hannah took a deep breath. One step at a time, she told herself. First, she needed to finish processing the revelations about her father and the aquifer. Hannah spent the afternoon reviewing the documents from the safe deposit box. The more she studied them, the more significant they seemed. The aquifer beneath. Their properties wasn't just any water source. It contained a rare combination of minerals that gave it unique properties. No wonder her grandfather had kept it quiet. In the wrong hands, this information could have led to exploitation that would have destroyed Peachville decades ago. As evening approached with no word from Eli, Hannah grew increasingly restless. The conversation they'd been about to have when James interrupted seemed more important with each passing hour. They needed to clarify what they both wanted, what kind of future they might build together. Finally, unable to wait any longer, Hannah drove into town. The Wildflower Cafe seemed the logical place to start looking for Eli. Through the window, she could see Martha wiping down counters, preparing to close for the day. "Martha," Hannah called as she entered. "Have you seen Eli or his ex-wife?" "Sarah?" Martha's expression grew cautious. "They were here earlier having quite the intense discussion. Left about an hour ago, heading toward Tom Garcia's office." "The hardware store owner? Why would they go there?" "Tom's also a notary, does some basic legal paperwork for folks who don't want to drive to the county courthouse." Martha set down her rag. "Honey, are you okay? You look worried." "I'm fine. Just trying to understand what's happening." Hannah hesitated. "Martha, did you know about the safe deposit box? Did my father give you a key to hold for me?" Martha shook her head. "No, dear. James wasn't one to share his personal business, even with old friends like me." Hannah thanked her and headed for Tom Garcia's hardware store, which doubled as his notary office. The "closed" sign was hanging on the door, but she could see lights on in the back office. She knocked firmly. Tom answered, looking surprised to see her. "Hannah, what brings you by after hours?" "I'm looking for Eli. Is he here?" Tom glanced over his shoulder, then stepped outside, closing the door behind him. "He's in my office with his ex-wife and son. They're finishing up some paperwork." "What kind of paperwork?" Hannah asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Tom looked uncomfortable. "Not really my place to say, client confidentiality and all that." Before Hannah could press further, the door opened behind Tom. Sarah Bennett stood there, an elegant woman in her 40s with styled blonde hair and a confident bearing. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of Hannah. "So you're Hannah Cole," she said, her voice cool.